The morning sky above New Busan turned dark with enemy ships. They came without warning, dropping from the clouds like metal rain. The people in the streets looked up and saw death falling toward them. Captain Lee Min-ho stood on the command deck of the orbital defense station. His screens showed hundreds of red dots moving toward the planet below. He knew those ships. Everyone in the galaxy knew them. The Velthari had come to hunt. All stations, open fire, Min-ho ordered. His voice was steady, but his heart was racing. The defense guns roared to life. Bright lines of energy cut across the black sky. Some enemy ships exploded. Others kept coming. There were too many of them. Within 2 hours, the Velthari landing craft touched down in the capital city. Soldiers with gray skin and 4 arms marched through the streets. They kicked down doors. They dragged families from their homes. They shot anyone who tried to run. By sunset, 40,000 humans knelt in the central plaza with guns pointed at their heads. Among them were doctors, farmers, teachers, and children. 2,000 children from the colony school sat together, holding hands and crying quietly. The Velthari Supreme Commander was called Torek. He was tall and covered in battle scars. He walked among the hostages like a farmer walking through his cattle. He smiled with teeth that were sharp and black. "Humans," he said into a camera that broadcast across the galaxy, "your people now belong to me. I want 500 billion credits. I want all Velthari prisoners released from your jails. I want you to leave 3 of your border systems forever. You have 1 week." Paused and looked at the crowd of terrified faces. "But first, let me show you that I am serious." He raised his hand. His soldiers pulled 200 people to their feet. Old men, young women. A boy who looked no older than 12. They lined them up against a wall. The galaxy watched as Torek gave the order. The guns fired. 200 bodies fell to the ground. Blood spread across the white stones of the plaza. 6 days remain, Torek said calmly. "I will kill more each day until you agree." The broadcast ended. Across human space, people screamed in horror and rage. On 100 worlds, humans watched their brothers and sisters die and felt something old and dark wake up inside them. The message reached Earth in minutes. It reached the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime just as fast. Leaders from 47 species gathered to discuss what everyone assumed would happen next. Negotiations would begin. Credits would be transferred. Prisoners would be exchanged. The hostages would be freed. This was how things worked. This was how things had always worked. But the message also reached Admiral Kang Junho. He was 62 years old. His hair was gray, and his face was lined with the weight of 30 years in the fleet. He had fought pirates. He had defended colonies. He had buried friends. He had never lost a battle, and he had never broken a promise. When the broadcast ended, his bridge crew looked at him. Some had tears in their eyes. Others had fists clenched so tight their knuckles were white. "Sir," his communications officer said, "Earth Command is sending orders." Junho nodded and read the message on his screen. It was short. It was clear. It was exactly what he expected. He stood up from his chair and faced his crew. "The Velthari have murdered 200 of our people," he said. "They hold 40,000 more. They believe we will pay them for the privilege of getting our families back. They believe we are like the other species in this galaxy, soft and afraid and willing to buy peace with blood money." He walked to the main viewing window. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. "They are wrong." He turned back to his crew. "Earth Command has given us our orders. We do not negotiate with murderers. We do not pay ransoms to killers. We do not trade prisoners for hostages. These are not new rules. These are old promises made by our ancestors after centuries of learning a hard truth." His voice grew harder. "The truth is simple. If you pay a murderer, you create more murderers. If you reward a kidnapper, you create more kidnappers. Every credit we give them buys the next attack. Every prisoner we release kills again. Our ancestors learned this lesson in blood, and they made a covenant that we would never forget it." He walked back to his command chair. "The Velthari expect us to talk. They expect us to beg. They expect us to offer them money and cry for mercy. He sat down and looked at the tactical display showing enemy positions above New Busan. Instead, we will give them war. He pressed a button on his chair. All ships. This is Admiral Junho. Set course for New Busan. Combat speed. We jump in 48 hours. Across the fleet, engines roared to life. 300 warships turned toward the distant colony. Pilots climbed into fighters. Marines checked their weapons. Medics prepared for casualties. On Earth, Ambassador Park Yuna received her own orders. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She had spent 20 years arguing with aliens, and she had never backed down from a fight. She read the orders twice, then smiled a cold smile. "Ali," she whispered. She stood up and walked toward the transport that would take her to Nexus Prime. The Galactic Council expected her to announce the beginning of negotiations. They expected her to discuss payment terms and prisoner exchanges. They did not know what she was actually going to say. They did not know that humans had stopped negotiating with terrorists. 300 years ago, they did not know that the Velthri had just made the worst mistake of their lives. But they would learn. The whole galaxy would learn. The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room Ambassador Park Yuna had ever seen. It was shaped like a bowl, with seats rising up in circles around a central platform. Beings of every shape and color filled those seats. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had no bodies at all, just clouds of glowing gas held together by invisible fields. High Arbiter Melox sat at the highest point of the chamber. He was ancient, even by galactic standards. His body was soft and slug-like, covered in wrinkled purple skin. He had mediated disputes between species for 600 years. He had never failed to find a peaceful solution. Today, he was certain would be no different. "The chair recognizes Ambassador Yuna of Earth," he announced. His voice was wet and slow, like mud sliding down a hill. Yuna walked to the central platform. She was the smallest person in the room, but she stood straight and looked up at the assembled delegates without fear. "Honored members of the Council," she began, "I am here to deliver the official response of the United Earth government to the Velthri demands." Melox leaned forward with interest. "Please proceed, Ambassador. We are eager to assist in facilitating the negotiations." "There will be no negotiations." The chamber fell silent. Delegates looked at each other in confusion. "I apologize," Melox said. "My translator must have made an error. You said there will be no negotiations?" "Your translator is working perfectly, High Arbiter. Earth has rejected all Velthri demands. We will not pay the ransom. We will not release prisoners. We will not abandon our border systems." Delegate Voron of the Keth Consortium jumped to his feet. He was a thin creature with blue skin and too many eyes. His people had dealt with Velthri raiders for centuries. "This is madness," he shouted. "You have 40,000 people in their hands. They will kill them all." "The Velthri have already killed 200 of our people," Yuna replied calmly. "They murdered them on live broadcast to make a point. If we pay them, what point do we make? That killing humans is profitable? That slaughter is an effective negotiating tool. But the hostages will be rescued or avenged. Those are the only options we accept." The chamber exploded into noise. Dozens of delegates shouted at once. Some called Yuna heartless. Others called humans insane. A few sat quietly and watched with expressions that were hard to read. Melox raised a heavy arm for silence. "Ambassador," he said slowly, "you must understand. Every species negotiates. This is how civilization works. The alternative is endless war. Surely you see that paying a ransom, while unpleasant, saves lives." Yuna shook her head. "It does not save lives, High Arbiter. It delays deaths. The Keith have paid 17 ransoms to the Velthari in the past century. Has the raiding stopped, or has it increased?" Voron opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. His many eyes blinked rapidly. "Our ancestors learned this truth the hard way," Yuna continued. "For centuries they negotiated with terrorists. They paid ransoms. They released prisoners. They made deals. And every time they did, the attacks multiplied. Every payment proved that violence worked. Every deal proved that murder was profitable. She let her words hang in the air, so they made a covenant. A promise written in the blood of the innocent. Never again. Never pay. Never negotiate. Never reward those who kill our people. This covenant has protected humanity for 300 years. And when hostages die because you refuse to pay, Melix asked, we mourn them, we honor them, and we hunt down their killers with every resource we have. The chamber was quiet now. The delegates watched Yuna with a mixture of horror and fascination. The council cannot support this course of action, Melloc said finally. We must distance ourselves from human decisions. We fear Velthari retaliation against other species. I understand, Yuna said. We did not ask for your support. We only came to inform you of our choice. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the delegates began arguing again, their voices rising and falling like waves on a shore. Far away in the dark valleys of New Busan, a different kind of meeting was happening. Commander Beek Sujin crawled through mud and frozen grass. Behind her, 20 of the best soldiers in the Terran Special Forces followed in silence. They wore black suits that bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. They carried weapons that made no sound. They had landed 3 hours ago in a canyon 50 kilometers from the capital. No enemy sensors had seen them. No patrols had found them. They moved like ghosts through the night. Sujin stopped and raised her fist. Her team froze. Through her scope, she could see the edge of the capital city. Velthari soldiers walked the streets with weapons ready. Searchlights swept across empty buildings. The sounds of crying drifted on the wind. Command, she whispered into her radio. We have visual on the target area. Confirming enemy positions. Admiral Junho's voice came back, small and distant. Understood, Commander. Begin mapping phase. We need every gun position, every patrol route, every possible entry point. The fleet jumps in 40 hours. Copy that, Admiral. We will be ready. She turned to her team and made a series of hand signals. They split into groups of 4 and disappeared into the shadows. Somewhere in the city, 2,000 children waited in a school that had become a prison. They did not know that help was coming. They did not know that men and women were crawling through the darkness to save them. But Torak did not know either. He sat in his command center, watching the Galactic Council broadcast. He saw the other species argue. He saw them condemn the humans. He smiled his black-toothed smile. They are alone, he said to his officers. The galaxy has abandoned them. They will break soon. They always break. He had never been more wrong in his life. Dr. Shinhana pressed her hand over the young girl's mouth to stop her from screaming. Outside the basement window, Velthari soldiers marched past, their heavy boots shaking the ground. Quiet, Hannah whispered. They will pass. Stay quiet. The girl nodded, tears streaming down her face. She was maybe 8 years old. She had watched her parents get dragged away that morning. Hannah was the colony's chief physician. When the attack came, she had been in the hospital. She had escaped through a service tunnel and spent the last 2 days hiding civilians in basements, attics, and abandoned buildings. She had saved perhaps 200 people. It was not enough. It would never be enough. Her radio crackled softly. A voice she did not recognize spoke in coded words. Songbird, this is Shadow. Confirm your position. Anna's heart jumped. Shadow was the code name for Terran Special Forces. Shadow, Songbird confirms. Sector 7. Basement level of the old water plant. Copy, Songbird. We have you marked. Stay hidden. Package delivery in 36 hours. Package delivery. That meant the fleet was coming. That meant rescue was coming. Understood, Shadow. I have 200 packages ready for transport. Good work, Songbird. Keep them safe. Shadow out. Anna closed her eyes and let out a long breath. 36 hours. She just needed to keep these people alive for 36 more hours. Across the city, Sergeant Yu Taeyeon was doing similar work. He was a ground forces soldier who had been off duty when the attack came. He had grabbed his rifle and disappeared into the urban maze before the Velthari could catch him. For 2 days, he had watched and counted. He knew where the enemy had placed their guns. He knew which streets they patrolled and when. He knew where they kept the prisoners and how many guards stood watch. He sent all of this information to Commander Sujin's team through coded bursts of radio static. The enemy never noticed. Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council continued to argue. Elder Counselor Primex sat in his observation booth and watched the chaos below. He was old even by the standards of his long-lived species. His skin was like tree bark, rough and gray. His eyes glowed soft amber in the dim light. He had studied humans for decades. He had read their history, learned their languages, and tried to understand how such a young species had grown so powerful so quickly. Now, watching their ambassador stand alone against the entire galaxy, he began to understand. They think differently, he said to himself. They do not count lives saved today. They count lives saved across generations. Delegate Vorin approached him during a break in the session. You seem calm, Elder Primex. Do you not find the human position disturbing? Primex considered the question. Disturbing? No. Terrifying. Perhaps terrifying? They are going to let their own people die rather than pay a simple ransom. No, Primex said slowly. They are going to fight a war rather than teach their enemies that war is profitable. They are willing to lose thousands today so that millions will live tomorrow. That kind of thinking is rare in this galaxy. It is also very dangerous. Dangerous for whom? For anyone who stands against them? On the council floor, Ambassador Yuna was speaking again. I understand that many of you find our position extreme, she said. Allow me to share some history. She pressed a button on her podium. A holographic display appeared above her head, showing images of ancient Earth. 300 years ago, terrorism was common on our world. Groups would kidnap innocent people and demand payment. Governments would negotiate. They would pay ransoms. They would release prisoners. They told themselves they were saving lives. The images changed. Statistics appeared. Numbers climbed higher and higher. But the kidnappings did not stop. They increased. Every successful ransom taught criminals that hostage-taking worked. Every released prisoner went back to killing. Within 50 years, kidnapping had become an industry. Thousands of people were taken every year. The images changed again. Now they showed something different. Soldiers in black. Burning buildings, bodies, and something changed. New leaders came to power. They made a new rule. No negotiation. No payment. No deals. Instead, every kidnapper would be hunted. Every hostage would be rescued or avenged. The cost did not matter. She paused. In the first year, many hostages died. The kidnappers thought they could force us to return to the old ways. They were wrong. We buried our dead and kept fighting. We found every kidnapper. We destroyed every criminal organization. We showed the universe that taking human hostages was not profitable. It was suicide. The statistics changed again. The kidnapping numbers began to fall. Year after year, they dropped. Within a decade, they were nearly zero. This is our covenant, Yuna said. It was paid for with the blood of innocents who died in those first terrible years. We will not betray their sacrifice. We will not teach the galaxy that murdering humans is a path to profit. High Arbiter Malak shook his heavy head. And if your fleet fails, if the rescue does not work, then we will send another fleet, and another. We will keep coming until the Velthari are destroyed or surrender our people. There is no outcome where we pay. Across the galaxy, Torak received reports that the humans were not responding to his demands. He grew impatient. He ordered his soldiers to prepare another group of hostages for execution. If they will not listen to words, he said, they will listen to screams. He did not know that Commander Sujin was already cutting through the outer wall of the school where the children were held. He did not know that Admiral Junho's fleet was hours away from jumping into the system. He did not know that his time was running out. The sky split open with light. 300 human warships jumped into the system at once. They appeared in a perfect circle around New Busan, their weapons already powered and ready. The Velthri fleet, scattered in orbit and expecting weeks of negotiation, had no time to form a defensive line. Admiral Junho stood on his bridge and watched the tactical display fill with red and blue dots. All batteries, fire at will. Priority targets are troop transports and command ships. Do not let them run. The human fleet opened fire. Beams of energy cut through Velthri cruisers like knives through paper. Missiles streaked across the void, finding targets and turning them into expanding clouds of fire and metal. The Velthri commander screamed orders. But it was too late. Half his fleet was burning before the first return shot was fired. On the planet below, Torak heard the explosions in orbit. He ran to his window and saw the sky filled with falling stars. Each one was a Velthri ship dying. Impossible, he whispered. They were supposed to negotiate. His communication officer rushed in. Supreme Commander. Human dropships are entering the atmosphere. Hundreds of them. Torak grabbed the officer by the throat. Then we kill the hostages. All of them now. But as he gave the order, the wall of the school building exploded inward. Commander Sujin came through the smoke like a demon. Her rifle fired 3 times, and 3 Velthri guards fell dead. Behind her, her team spread through the building, moving fast and silent. Find the children, she shouted. Kill anyone who resists. The Velthri guards tried to fight back. They were good soldiers. They had conquered a dozen worlds, but they had never faced humans in close combat. They did not understand how fast humans could move, how accurately they could shoot, how hard they would fight when children were in danger. In 4 minutes, every Velthri guard in the school was dead. 2,000 children were let out through the hole in the wall, into the waiting arms of medics who had followed the assault team across the city. The real battle was just beginning. Lieutenant Choi Yunji gripped the controls of her dropship as anti-aircraft fire exploded around her. The sky was filled with bright flashes and dark smoke. Ships on both sides were falling. All units, we are 30 seconds from landing zone. Marines, get ready. Behind her, 50 soldiers checked their weapons one last time. Their faces were hard with focus. They knew many of them would not survive the next few hours. They did not care. Their people needed them. The dropship hit the ground hard. The rear door dropped open. The Marines poured out into the streets of the capital. Corporal Han Jinwoo was the first one out. He was 22 years old, on his first real combat mission. His hands were shaking, but his aim was steady. His enemy position on the rooftop. He shouted, "Covering fire." The Marines scattered and returned fire. Velthri soldiers fell from the building. The squad advanced, moving from cover to cover. The battle spread across the city like a fire. Human forces attacked from every direction, pushing toward the central plaza where the hostages were held. The Velthri fought back hard, using the buildings and streets as defensive positions. Corporal. Jinwoo's squad found themselves trapped near the colony hospital. 200 wounded civilians were inside, too injured to be moved. Velthri forces surrounded the building, trying to break in. Behold here. Jinwoo shouted. No one gets past us. For 3 hours, his squad of 12 Marines held the hospital against waves of enemy attacks. They ran out of ammunition and fought with knives and fists. They used broken furniture as shields and thrown rocks as weapons. When reinforcements finally arrived, only 5 Marines were still standing. The ground around them was covered with Velthri bodies. Jinwoo had been shot twice. He was still fighting. Inside the hospital, Dr. Shin Hana worked without rest. Her surgical bay was a room that used to be a cafeteria. Her equipment was whatever she had managed to steal or improvise. Her assistants were 2 nurses and a terrified medical student. She saved 47 lives that day. Soldiers and civilians, adults and children. Humans end when they brought her one, even a wounded Velthri prisoner. She did not care about sides. She cared about lives. Doctor, one of the nurses said, why are you helping the enemy? Hannah did not look up from her work. Because if we become monsters to defeat monsters, What have we saved? The battle raged for 18 hours. Block by block, street by street, human forces pushed the Velthory back toward the central plaza. The fighting was brutal. Every building was a fortress. Every corner was an ambush. Admiral Gunho watched from orbit as the casualties mounted. 4,000 humans dead. Then 4,100. Then 4,200. He did not flinch. He did not order a retreat. He had made a promise. Finally, as the sun began to set on the second day, Commander Sujin led her team into the Velthory Command Center. Torak was waiting for them. He held a child in front of him, a knife pressed against the small throat. "Stop," he screamed. "One more step, and I kill this one." Sujin stopped. Her team stopped. For a moment, no one moved. "You think we are like the others?" Torak said. "You think you can scare us with your guns? But I have the power here. This child dies unless you let me go." Sujin looked at the child. A little boy, maybe 7 years old. His eyes were wide with terror. Then she looked at Torak. "You already killed 200 of our people," she said quietly. "You think one more will change anything?" She raised her rifle. Wait, she fired twice. The first shot took Torak in the shoulder. He spun, releasing the child. The second shot took him in the head. The little boy fell forward. Sujin caught him before he hit the ground. "It's over," she said softly. "You're safe now." By midnight, the fighting was done. 38,400 hostages were alive. 1,600 had been killed during the occupation or the battle. 4,200 human soldiers had given their lives. The Velthory forces were destroyed. The survivors were captured, bound, and held for trial. There would be no ransom. There would be no exchange. There would only be justice. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Nupusin. The galaxy had watched everything. They watched humans bury their dead with full military honors. They watched the trials of the captured Velthory, conducted in open courts with full legal proceedings. They watched the executions of those found guilty of murder and war crimes. And they watched New Busan rise from its ashes. Within weeks, construction crews were rebuilding destroyed buildings. Within a month, the colony school was open again. Within 3 months, the streets were full of life once more. The dead were not forgotten. A great wall of white stone now stood in the central plaza. Every name was carved into it. Every soldier, every civilian, every child who had not made it home. Ambassador Park Yuna stood before the Galactic Council once more. The chamber was quieter this time. The delegates watched her with different eyes than before. Some looked at her with anger, others with fear. A few, perhaps with respect. High Arbiter Malax called the session to order. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Yuna of Earth. You may deliver your report." Yuna stepped to the central platform. She looked older than she had 3 months ago. There was gray in her hair that had not been there before, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Honored members of the Council," she began. "I am here to report on the resolution of the New Busan incident." She pressed a button on her podium. Statistics appeared in the air above her. On the first day of the attack, the Velthory took 40,000 hostages and murdered 200 in cold blood. Over the following days, they killed another 300 before our forces could reach them. During the battle to liberate the colony, 1,100 more were lost. She paused. 38,400 people are alive today because we did not negotiate, because we did not pay, because we came for our people with fire and steel instead of credit transfers and prisoner exchanges. "Delegate," Vorin stood up, "in your own casualties. How many soldiers died in this battle?" 4,200, Yuna said. Each one a volunteer who knew the risks. Each one buried with honor. Each one remembered, is that not too high a price? For whom? Yuna asked. For the soldiers, it was their choice to serve. For the civilians, it was their rescue. For the Velthory, it was a lesson. She looked around the chamber. Let me share something with you. In the past century, the Velthory have attacked Keth colonies 17 times. Each time, the Keth paid the ransom. The attacks did not stop. They increased. Each payment funded the next raid. Each success encouraged another. Vorin sat down slowly. His many eyes would not meet hers. Now consider our history, Una continued. This is the first Velthari attack on a human colony in 50 years. The last one ended the same way. We came for our people. We destroyed the raiders. We did not pay. And yet they attacked you again, Melek said, once in 50 years? Because they thought we had grown soft. Because they watched the galaxy pay and assumed we would do the same. They were wrong. She pressed another button. A new image appeared. It showed Velthari fleet movements across the galaxy. Since New Busan, 3 Velthari raiding fleets have been detected moving through neutral space. All 3 have changed course away from human territory. They are now targeting Keth and Vorin colonies instead. The chamber erupted into angry voices. Vorin jumped to his feet again, shouting accusations. Una waited for silence. I do not share this to mock you, she said. I share it to teach you. The Velthari understand strength. They understand consequences. They do not attack those who fight back. They attack those who pay. Elder Counselor Primek spoke for the first time. Ambassador, there are those who say your species is cruel, that you value principles over lives. How do you respond? Una thought about this for a long moment. We value lives, she said. More than you know. We value them so much that we refuse to put a price on them. We refuse to treat our people as products to be bought and sold. We refuse to tell kidnappers that human lives can be purchased. She stepped away from the podium and walked toward the assembled delegates. Every species in this chamber has paid ransoms. Every species has made deals with murderers. And every species has watched the attacks continue, growing worse year after year. You call it pragmatism. You call it saving lives. But what you are really doing is teaching the galaxy that violence works. That murder is profitable. That the lives of your people are for sale. She stopped in the center of the chamber. We made a different choice. It cost us blood. It cost us tears. But it saved us from becoming victims forever. The galaxy knows that attacking humans means war. Real war. War without negotiation, without payment, without mercy for those who harm our people. She looked up at Melek. You asked me once if it was worth it. The cost in blood. Let me answer you now. She pointed to the display, which now showed a map of human space. 47 human colonies. 12 billion people. They sleep safely tonight because their enemies know the price of threatening them. Not credits. Not prisoners. War. Complete and total war until the threat is eliminated. She turned back to the council. So yes, High Arbiter. It was worth it. Every drop of blood. Every tear. Every grave. Because our people are free. And they will remain free for as long as we keep this covenant. The chamber was silent. Melek nodded slowly. Council will update the Galactic Navigation database with a new warning for human systems. Clerk entered the new text into the official record. It would be broadcast to every ship in the galaxy within hours. Warning: species does not negotiate under duress. Hostage-taking will result in military response. Proceed accordingly. Una bowed to the council and turned to leave. Far away on New Busan, Admiral Kang Junho stood before the memorial wall. The names of the dead stretched above him, carved in stone that would last 1,000 years. Commander Baek Sujin stood beside him. Her arm was still in a sling from a wound she had taken in the final battle. She would carry the scar for life. Do you think they learned? She asked. Junho reached out and touched one of the names on the wall. A young corporal who had died holding a hospital. A boy who had been on his first mission. Some of them, he said. The smart ones. The ones who understand that there are things worth dying for. And the others. Junho turned away from the wall and looked up at the sky. The stars were bright tonight. Somewhere out there, Velthari fleets were changing course, moving away from human space. The others will learn soon enough, he said quietly. One way or another, they will learn. Across the galaxy, the warning spread. Species who had never thought much about humans began to pay attention. Merchants adjusted their trade routes. Pirates updated their target lists. Governments reconsidered their diplomatic approaches. The humans did not negotiate with. It's murderers. The galaxy would not forget.